Good afternoon. As you know, last week I kind of gave you a hint about the homework that's coming ahead. So I want to do the same thing for this week as well. I won't be opening up the textbook and going through things this time around because honestly, that won't be all that helpful. Rather, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a few slides and give you my thoughts about building a mini literature review. You're going to find out that week two's homework, or modules two's homework, has you build a small lit review using around 5 different papers or so. And you might be asking yourself, that's cool and all, but how the heck do I do that? I'm going to give you a very light and breezy approach on doing this. The other thing I want you to know is that this approach here is subsetted from the general approach on actually to how to do a lit review. So you can think of this introduction as like the light version of literature reviewing. When you're more ready someday, probably outside of this course, down the line in your degree program somewhere, you'll do a formal literature review, is my guess. And you'll learn an actual full blown method. And you're going to find that what we talked about here is kind of going to be part of that method. So if you want to get a good, kind entry level introduction to what reviews are about, this is for you. Here we go. A literature review is really an equation. I know this sounds really stupid, but here we go. You have a vision of what you want to dig into. You have a sense of the problem that you want to dig into, and probably inside you have a sense or a vision of how you want to go about doing that. Whether it's articulated or not, it's besides the point. Somehow inside, you know you want to do this. We're going to call that your vision. Does that make sense? Good. What we do is we take your vision and blend it with what other people have figured out in journal articles and grade literature. We'll talk about those on the next slide. And we put those two things together to come up with the lit review. So the big part of the equation here is this. The literature you choose to focus on and use for your lit review really has to speak to the vision of your study. It really has to speak to the problem that you want to dig into and how you want to dig into it. Here's an example. Let's say you're a quantitative researcher. You like working with numbers, doing statistics and SPSS and cool stuff like that. Okay, and Excel and other things. Now, if you want to do a study, you're going to say, wow, my vision is quantitative. I need numbers. So when I go do my literature review, I can have a few qualitative papers, don't get me wrong, so I get the big ideas. But most of my papers should be quantitatively or mathematically or numerically oriented. That's what that summation, that plus means in the middle. If you put these together, you'll end up with something we'll talk about in a few minutes. That will be called your literature review. It'll be your view of the literature given the vision you're coming from. And everyone does this differently. But I'm just going to share a very brief technique on doing this. But before I get into this technique, I need to actually press the correct button and go to the next slide. Okay, no one ever said your teacher was smart. There are two types of literature out there. Well, there's more, but these are the two biggies. Okay. There are journal, stuff published in peer-reviewed journals, stuff that's refereed, all the stuff that every other class says this is what you need to use. Okay. Then there is a huge body of literature called gray literature. It's not bad or anything like that. It's just not peer-reviewed. Okay, when you get down to it, the world runs off of gray literature. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it was over 92% of literature used in research and in professional work and in administration is gray. Gray really runs the world. People spend trillions of dollars every decade to generate sound gray literature, consolidations of knowledge that are not peer reviewed. For example, crime statistics is gray literature. And if you want crime statistics, you go to the FBI or Interpol, depending what part of the world you're in, to get statistics that you can believe in and that everyone else in your working community will say, yes, this is a legitimate source. So if you want to know what gray literature is, just ask yourself, who is the authoritative source that everyone believes that whatever they produce is gray literature? Peer-reviewed articles are stuff that appears in journals and is refereed and so forth, and you're familiar with those already. You'll find that peer-reviewed are written for geeks like me. That's how it works, and for you too. And gray literature is written for everybody. It's written at all levels for all types of sectors and all sorts of, projects and whatever, all education levels. And it's usually not very profitable. It's usually written at a loss, believe it or not. But the knowledge is so useful. People, agencies, and governments and all that put together because it's just that good. Okay. If you need another example of gray literature, go look at the United Nations website, the UN. They publish, wow, um, an unbelievable number of PDFs and presentations, you name it. All that's considered gray, but it's extremely useful because it helps the world. Now, let's keep going. Now that you know the difference between gray and academic literature, let's just talk about the goals for a lit review. When you do a lit review, there are really 6 goals. Okay, probably less depending upon what you want to do, but these are the biggies. The first one is to provide some sort of background to your study. It doesn't have to be historical, it just has to be some sort of background. Okay. Second goal is share our perspective of the problem today. How do we think about the problem today, right now? Share that. Then your third goal is, hey, given this problem and what's going on, what are its big concepts? What are the practices involved? What are the theories driving our understanding of the problem that you're digging into? That's goal number 3. We're going to skip goal number 4, and we'll come back to it, and we're going to go right to goal number 5. Goal number 5 is the big one that most academics tell you. This is the important part of a literature review, and honestly, I don't buy it. Everyone says, oh, yeah, when you do a lit review, you're contributing to human knowledge, and that contribution is absolutely vital. So find the gap, fill it, and make that your contribution. Okay, that's good and all. Don't get me wrong. Is it the most important thing, like a lot of people say? I'm doubtful. Is it important? Yes. 6, goal number 6, demonstrate a strong mastery of the knowledge in your field. That's just kind of like duh. That's why we do a lit review, is to show that we understand the cutting edge of our knowledge. Yes, that's what, gives us the master's in MBA. Now, let's go back to goal number 4. Goal number 4 is the one I skipped, and to me is the most important one. A literature review is an expression of how you see the problem given what you've learned from others. In a way, it's like a lens. For example, imagine you had a microscope, and imagine you could change the lens in the microscope. One lens in the microscope only allows you to see all the red things on your slide. Another lens lets you only see all the green things. And yet another lens lets you see all the blue things. You're going to look at your slide through those 3 different lenses and see the stuff in the slide 3 different ways, even though it's all the same stuff on the slide. So, depending how you build your literature review, it'll act like a lens, having you focus on certain parts of the problem over the others and understand certain parts of the problems relative to others and things like that. It colors how you see your problem. Hence, it's a lens. To me, that's the most important thing. Because as a practitioner, or even as a theorist, when you want to go out and solve a problem, the way you see it can either enable you to find the solution or just hopelessly cripple you and you'll never get to the solution. So the creation of a lens from a practical standpoint, if you want to call it that, is absolutely 10,000% vital. And yes, I know 10,000% is not possible, but I don't care. Now, those are the goals. Let's keep going. And we're almost done, I promise. Next slide. What's a generic outline for a lit review? Okay, this is probably the most generic one I can possibly ever give you. When you do a lit review, you're going to be reading about 5 or 7 different papers, and you're going to be describing the papers and getting all these ideas and cool stuff like that. And you're going to have them all listed out on the paper, and you're going to be like, what do I do with these things? All these cool ideas and stuffs that you found can be grouped together into themes. For example, let's say I did a lit review on food. Okay, I know, kind of random. But I had 3 different things appear in my lit review somewhere in the list of stuff. Apples, oranges, pears. Okay. I can lump those together as a theme of produce. Aha. And I can write up a section about produce. Not a bad deal. Same idea with your outline. When you start going through all these papers, you're going to see things and ideas and concepts and stuff like this that seem to naturally just group together. And we group them, and we call that group a theme. I know. Isn't that easy? Who says you need an advanced degree to do this sort of stuff? Okay, now let's keep going. These themes will eventually turn into headings in in your document, usually level 1 or level 2s or level 2s and level 3s, depending on how you write. So in my food literature review, I'll have a level 2 heading, for example, of produce. Another level heading may be candy, because candy comes in all different forms. Another one could be beverages, stuff like that. So by grouping what you found into themes, the themes tell you exactly what your level headings need to be in your lit review. That's kind of nice. Now let's keep going. Now, how do you build a lit review on paper, at least in very somewhat sort of outline-ish sort of way? That's what's on the left up here. Okay. Introduction. Write up an introduction paragraph. Prepare your reader to read the lit review. Okay. Usually it's done in chapter 1 of whatever you're writing, but I am going to take that out because we don't have a chapter 1 in this course, and I should have taken that out before I recorded this. See? No one ever said your professor was smart, and if they did, they lied. Here we go. Now, use one paragraph to orientate your reader to what they're going to be reading. Then, launch into a level 2 or level 1 heading, depending how you format, of your search strategy. Share 1 or 2 paragraphs on how you found the literature you're going to integrate into your lit review. Share your keywords, share the databases, share how you went about it. Make sure someone else can sit down and read it and go, I can do what they did and find their articles. Cool. Then, introduce the problem. Sit down and discuss where the problem came from. Okay, does that have to be historical? No. But there's something here which is kind of neat to share. Today's problems are just the reflections of yesterday's problems. Really, when you get down to it, the problems that we're facing today existed yesterday, but they just exist a little differently today. Keep that in mind. Then, after you describe the problem using a paragraph or 2 or 3, depending upon how you want to go about it, you share our current perspective of the problem that you want to dig into. Share the big ideas and theories that drive your understanding and our understanding of the problem as of today, or as best as humanly possible. Use a paragraph or 2, share your perspective. This is usually called a theoretical framework. Share your perspective of how you understand the problem in light of the literature that you just read. Everyone does this differently, so go for it. Usually this is 3 or 4 paragraphs, but for this study, let's just do 1. Okay, 1 paragraph. Of course, I need to learn how to type. Here we go. Make 1 paragraph explaining how the literature review was limited by using, let's say, only 5 sources, or how it was delimited or controlled by you, and maybe a little bit of a hint about the gap or misunderstanding that your literature review helps us fill in a bit. That'd be a nice thing. Then have a summary to transition the reader out. So if you can get this sort of flow in your own way for your lit review, you're going to find that your lit review won't be so bad, and neither will this homework assignment. Hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, ask. I'll be happy to help. I'll see you later.